Hello and welcome to English Vibes Hub, the YouTube channel where we dive into all things English and help you improve your language skills. I'm Emma, and I'm excited to be here today with Liam to talk about navigating cultural differences in English, focusing on idioms, expressions, and taboos.
That's right, Emma. Cultural differences can be fascinating, but also quite challenging for language learners. Today, we're going to explore some of the most interesting and commonly used idioms and expressions that might have different meanings or connotations in various cultures.
Absolutely. And to start us off, let's look at the phrasal verb to break a leg. Now, this doesn't literally mean to injure your leg, but rather it's a way of wishing someone good luck, especially before they perform on stage or do something challenging. For example, if Liam were about to give a presentation, I might say, "Break a leg, Liam."
Exactly, Emma. And that's a great example because in some cultures, wishing someone good luck directly might be seen as tempting fate or being insincere. The idiom to break a leg is a more casual and friendly way to express your support. Another interesting one is to cost an arm and a leg, which means something is very expensive.
Right, and understanding these idioms is crucial for effective communication. If someone says, "This new smartphone costs an arm and a leg," they're not literally suggesting you need to give up a limb for it, but rather that it's priced very high. Let's consider another example, to cry over spilled milk. This idiom advises against worrying about things that have already happened and can't be changed.
That's a good one, Emma. It's about moving on from mistakes or unfortunate events. If I accidentally spill coffee on my shirt, there's no use in getting upset about it. Instead, I should just clean up and move on. It's a very practical piece of advice wrapped in a memorable idiom.
Exactly. And speaking of practical advice, let's talk about to bend over backwards. This idiom means to go out of your way to help someone or accommodate their needs. For instance, if a customer has a very specific and somewhat unreasonable request, a store might bend over backwards to fulfill it in order to ensure customer satisfaction.
I see what you mean, Emma. It's about being extremely accommodating, even if it requires a bit of extra effort. This kind of flexibility can be very appreciated in both personal and professional contexts. Now, let's consider how these idioms might be perceived differently in various cultures and how that affects our communication.
That's a great point, Liam. Cultural differences play a significant role in how we interpret and use idioms. What might be a harmless expression in one culture could be offensive or confusing in another. It's essential for language learners to be aware of these nuances to avoid misunderstandings.
Understanding these cultural nuances can really enhance your ability to communicate effectively in English. It's not just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's also about grasping the cultural context in which language is used.
Let's think about to beat around the bush as another example. This idiom means to avoid talking directly or clearly about something, often because it's uncomfortable or difficult. In some cultures, directness is valued, while in others, subtlety and indirectness are preferred.
That's a fascinating one, Emma. The preference for directness versus indirectness can really impact how we communicate and interpret messages. If someone is beating around the bush, it might be seen as polite in one culture, but as evasive or untrustworthy in another.
It's also interesting to consider how idioms reflect cultural values and history. For example, to take it with a grain of salt means to be skeptical or cautious, which reflects a broader cultural value of questioning information before accepting it as true.
That's right, Emma. Idioms can offer a window into the culture and societal norms of the people who use them. They're not just colorful expressions. They carry deeper meanings and historical contexts that are worth exploring.
Now, let's discuss to cut to the chase. This idiom means to get to the point or the most interesting part of a conversation without wasting time on less important details. It's often used in professional settings or when time is limited.
I love that one, Emma. It's so useful in meetings or presentations when you need to focus on the key points. But as with any idiom, it's essential to consider your audience and the context. Using to cut to the chase in a casual conversation with friends might come across as abrupt or dismissive.
That's a great reminder, Liam. The context in which we use idioms is crucial. Let's think about how we can apply this understanding in our everyday conversations to become more engaging and respectful communicators.
Absolutely, Emma. By being mindful of the idioms we use and their potential impact on our listeners, we can navigate cultural differences more effectively and build stronger, more meaningful relationships.
I think that's a perfect place to pause our discussion for now. We've covered some really interesting idioms and begun to explore how cultural differences can affect their use and interpretation.
Yes, and there's definitely more to discuss. Let's continue our conversation, delving deeper into the complexities of cultural differences and how they influence our language use. I think what's also interesting, Emma, is how cultural differences can lead to misunderstandings when using idioms or phrasal verbs. For instance, the phrase break a leg can be really confusing for non-native speakers, as it means good luck rather than an actual physical injury.
Yes, I've had my fair share of explaining that one to friends from other countries. It's funny how something that's so common to us can be completely lost in translation. Speaking of which, have you ever had a situation where you had to navigate a cultural difference in a professional setting?
Actually, yes. I once worked with a team from Japan on a project, and we had to be really mindful of the concept of han and tate me, which refers to the contrast between a person's true feelings and their outward behavior. It was a challenge to understand and respect those boundaries.
Wow, that sounds like a fascinating experience. I've heard that in some Asian cultures, saving face is a really big deal, and you have to be careful not to inadvertently cause someone to lose face. That's where the idiom to save face comes from, right?
Exactly, and it's not just limited to Asian cultures. The concept of saving face exists in many societies, just in different forms. It's all about avoiding embarrassment or maintaining dignity. Another phrase that's related to this is to give someone the cold shoulder, which means to deliberately ignore or show indifference to someone.
I love that phrase. It's so evocative, and it's interesting how it can be used in both personal and professional contexts. For example, if someone is being rude or dismissive, you might say they're giving you the cold shoulder. But if you're trying to distance yourself from someone, you might also use that phrase to describe your actions.
That's a great point, Emma, and it brings me to another phrase that's commonly used in social situations, to pour your heart out. This means to share your deepest feelings or thoughts with someone, often in a very emotional or vulnerable way.
I've definitely done that with close friends before, and it's always a bit of a relief to get things off your chest. But it's also important to be mindful of the other person's boundaries and make sure they're comfortable with that level of intimacy. Otherwise, you might end up overstepping the mark or crossing a line, which can be really awkward.
Absolutely, and that's where another useful phrase comes in, to take something with a grain of salt. This means to be skeptical or cautious, and not to take something at face value. It's really helpful when dealing with rumors or unverified information.
I use that phrase all the time, especially when reading news articles or social media posts. It's so easy to get caught up in misinformation or exaggeration, but taking things with a grain of salt helps you stay grounded and critical. Now, let's try to role-play a situation where we have to navigate a cultural difference in a social setting.
Sounds like fun. Okay, let's say we're at a dinner party and someone makes a joke that's considered off-color or insensitive in their culture, but not in ours. How would we handle that situation?
That's a tough one. I think I would try to steer the conversation in a different direction, maybe by changing the subject or asking a question that shifts the focus away from the sensitive topic. What do you think, Liam?
I think that's a great approach, Emma. And it's also important to pick up on cues from the other person, like body language or tone of voice, to gauge how they're reacting to the situation. If someone seems uncomfortable or offended, it's best to back off and give them space.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding awkwardness, but also about showing respect and empathy for the other person's feelings and cultural background. Now, let me share a personal story about a time when I had to navigate a cultural difference in a professional setting.
I'm all ears, Emma. Please go on.
Okay, so I was working with a client from a very traditional and formal culture, and I had to be really mindful of the way I communicated with them. I had to toe the line and avoid anything that could be perceived as too casual or informal, which was a bit of a challenge for me since I'm naturally a very casual and friendly person.
I can imagine. It's like you had to put on a different hat and adapt to their cultural norms. But it's great that you were able to do that and build a strong working relationship with the client.
Thanks, Liam. And it's experiences like that which have taught me the importance of being culturally aware and sensitive in all aspects of life, not just in professional settings. It's really about being open-minded and willing to learn from others, and to take the bull by the horns when it comes to navigating cultural differences.
I couldn't agree more, Emma, and I think that's a great note to end on for now. Let's continue this conversation in our next segment, where we'll explore even more examples of cultural differences and how they impact our language use.
Welcome back to English Vibes Hub, everyone. I'm Emma, and I'm here with Liam. We're wrapping up our conversation on navigating cultural differences in English, focusing on idioms, expressions, and taboos. Liam, let's dive right in and explore some more examples.
Absolutely, Emma. One thing that's really interesting is how phrasal verbs can be culturally specific. For instance, to touch base means to contact someone briefly to check how they are or to discuss something. Can you think of a time when you might use this phrase, Emma?
That's a great example, Liam. I think to touch base is really useful in a work setting, especially if you're managing a team or working on a project with someone. You might say, "Let's touch base on Friday to see how everything is going." It's a very natural way to check in with someone without implying a lengthy conversation.
Exactly, and another phrasal verb that's commonly used is to pick up on something. This means to notice or become aware of something, often a subtle hint or cue. For example, you might say, "I picked up on the fact that she wasn't interested in the project, so I decided to approach someone else."
I love that one, Liam. It's so useful for describing those moments when you're not entirely sure what's going on, but you get a feeling about something. And it's a great way to practice your listening skills, too, because you have to be really tuned in to what the other person is saying to pick up on those subtle cues.
That's right, and let's not forget to get to the bottom of something. This means to find the truth or the underlying cause of a problem. For instance, if there's a rumor going around, you might say, "I want to get to the bottom of this and find out what's really going on."
I think that's a really important one, Liam, especially in the age of social media where misinformation can spread so quickly. Being able to get to the bottom of things and separate fact from fiction is a valuable skill. And finally, let's talk about to see eye to eye, which means to agree on something. If you and your friend see eye to eye on a particular topic, it means you have the same opinion or perspective.
That's a great choice, Emma. Seeing eye to eye can really strengthen relationships and make communication much easier. And it's interesting because even when we don't see eye to eye, being able to understand and respect each other's viewpoints is crucial for effective communication and building strong, healthy relationships.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, Liam. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring the world of cultural differences in English with you. I hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey and have picked up some useful tips and phrases along the way.
Thanks for tuning in to English Vibes Hub, everyone. If you liked this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content on learning English and navigating cultural differences. We'll catch you all in the next one on at English Vibes Hub S6W.